Hello, welcome to the Emotions with Ease podcast. This is Jami Glenn, the emotional wellness coach and host. You guys, we have a treat today. This is a first ever on the podcast. It is our first ever guest. I'm super excited about this conversation. This actual conversation is recorded, obviously in audio, but it was also recorded previously on YouTube. So if you are more of a visual watcher, a visual learner, head on over to YouTube and you can find this episode. On this episode, we have Cambria Bratcher. She's an advocate for helping people find their purpose and thrive in their roles, both at work and at home. She's a wife, a mother to 3 spunky girls and 1 spunky black lab. As a facilitator of the Working Genius model, she helps individuals and teams uncover their natural gifts and align with roles that energize them. She's also passionate about helping families thrive by applying the principles of the Working Genius framework at home, encouraging each family member to understand their unique strengths and find joy in their roles. Whether at the dinner table or during a weekend project, she believes that discovering your right seat on the bus starts at home. I loved this conversation with Cambria because she really does hone in on the different geniuses. And if you don't know what Working Genius is, we give you kind of a high level view of each of these working geniuses. So if this is a totally new concept to you, that's completely fine. You will not be lost. At the end of the episode, she gives us a way to reach out to her, connect with her if you want to learn more about the Working Genius, either by how do you implement this at home or how do you implement this in the workplace? So this was a really thought-provoking conversation just about our roles in the household. Where do we lean into our strengths and how can we kind of connect with our weaknesses, but also kind of figure out and identify the working genius if we have a co-parent of our kiddos, and just allows us. I love stuff like this. I love all of the personality tests or like the Enneagram. I know Working Genius isn't quite like a personality test, but it's something that gives you some more language as a parent on how you manage the household. So I hope this conversation is helpful. Let's get started. All right, Cambria, welcome to the podcast. We're so grateful to have you on. Here's the deal. We know each other from church, and you, I know, are very passionate about this awesome thing called Working Genius. And as we've just been talking, I've realized that I think it would be really helpful for some moms that are listening to this podcast, because here's what I know. A lot of specifically the moms that I work with, they really struggle with negative self-talk. And maybe some of these personality traits that they have that they don't really love about themselves. They don't love how they're managing the household. And instead of getting a better understanding of that, they really, they're just negative in their self-talk. They don't like how they're running the household. They compare themselves to other moms on social media and they're thinking why can't I do it that way? Or she seems to be managing so well. Why can't I get a grasp on all the things of the house? So I thought it would be great to have you on here to kind of guide us through this Working Genius model. I think a lot of people are probably familiar with maybe the Enneagram or Myers-Briggs or all those other personality assessments, and but Working Genius seems to be a specific framework that I don't know a lot of people know about it. So I'm excited to have you on here. You're going to give us kind of a high level view of each of the 6 types, and we're going to just dive into it. All right.
All right. Sounds good. Well, thank you for having me. And yes, very passionate about Working Genius. And actually, the reason why I'm passionate about Working Genius is because I hate personality assessments. Now, I will say I firmly believe in the Enneagram, but Working Genius is really focused on the art of getting work done. So it's actually a productivity assessment with a splash of personality in there. It was developed by Patrick Lencioni with the Table Group. If you've ever heard of 5 dysfunctions of a team. So I came to know about it in my role at my corporate job, and that's how I've been using it for the last few years. But the Working Genius is a model of getting work done wherever work has to get done. And if we're running families and family life and home life, there's a lot of work that has to get done. So, how do we do that? And how do we use our God given talents, which is what the working genius is, to get those done? So, everyone has. There are 6 steps to getting work done, getting an idea to reality and finished. And everyone has 2 steps that are their geniuses. So if you think of this as coffee, right? Like you got your Yeti mug this morning, you put the lid on, and it's staying hot for a long time. It brings you lots of energy and joy to be in these geniuses. And then you have your competencies. So these are things that you're naturally not as good at, but you're competent at, that you can do. It doesn't necessarily drain you, but it doesn't fuel you either. And so that I always compare it to like the Starbucks cup, right? With the lid and the sleeve on it. It's going to stay warm for a while as you're running around the house doing chores, but eventually it's going to cool. And then everyone has 2 frustrations. And that's the one where you had the, styrofoam coffee cup, there's a hole on it, or your kid knocked it over, right? Like these are the things that we hate doing. We avoid them at all costs if we can. They drain us, they drain our energy. Um, and we're not naturally good at them. We may have learned how to be skilled at them because there is a lot of the steps that we have to do as parents and leading families. But it doesn't mean that we find joy and energy out of them. So, if you think of this from a work aspect, you have 6 steps. Everyone has 2 geniuses. You have a team of 4. There's a likelihood you cover all 6. You think about it from a family perspective. If you're a single parent household, you're one person, there's 2 geniuses for you, and you have to do all 6 steps. Or 2 parent household, right? You may cover 4 if there's no overlap in your geniuses. So that's the framework and the idea behind the framework. If you look at it for high level real quick, and then we can dive into them each one by one. But wonder and invention is our first step. So wonder dreams about the ideas and the questions. Invention is like, oh, here's what we can do. Discernment then refines the idea and evaluates them. Galvanizing gets everyone excited and on board. Enablement gets the project or the task, whatever it might be, started, and like, here's what we need to do to accomplish this. And then tenacity finishes those projects or make sure that they accomplish the objective there. So that's a
Wait,
little
all that
high
makes
level.
sense. That all makes sense. And actually, see, this is why I wanted you on this podcast because you're already clarifying something for me. Are you saying that in every decision or every idea, all 6 of those traits or steps need to take place in order from like point A to point Z of completion of the idea? Is that what you said?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So then as a mom who is managing the household, making decisions, and when I say managing the household, I'm just talking about that the load of motherhood, how we're
Mhm.
taking our kids to the doctors a lot of times, or making sure that permission slips are signed, and making sure that our kids are getting, like, either we're delegating to our co-parent or delegating to somebody else of like, okay, we got to get the kids to this practice here, like all the things. Now, that can be a mom filling that role, but that can also be a dad filling that role, or an aunt, uncle, grandparent. So we're just really highlighting that general manager role in the
Mhm.
household. And so that is awesome and very clarifying. At my workplace, we took this assessment, and I have my working genius, and um, my frustration genius, and is that what it's called? Frustration genius? That
No,
doesn't
just
make sense.
frustration.
My
Yeah.
frustration. I did not put it together until right now, though, that all of those come into play with every single idea and decision. That's great.
Yep.
Okay. So give us like a high level view of each of these types.
Okay. Yeah. So if you start at the beginning, right, think of this as like high in the clouds wonder. And I know some people ask about like, kids take these kinds of assessments and everything? And so I think of a 5-year-old, right? They ask a lot of why. They really are curious about the world, right? but then they may grow out of that phase of development. But if they have that genius of wonder, so that's why we don't necessarily do it with little kids, because you may have to use these in different ways of development, but then you'll have one that naturally appears as you get older. And so if we think of it from an adult perspective, they're the ones in the family that are really bringing that vision and reflection and going, what kind of family do we want to be? Are we living in alignment with our values? Those are the things. Is there a better way for us to do XYZ, whatever it might be? So really they have that high level, and remember, that's only one aspect, right? We each have two, but that's where wonder really lives there.
Okay, great. And what might that, a person with wonder, if I am a parent where my working genius is wonder, what might that sound like in family life?
Well, that might sound like the two things that I hear a lot from people who have wonder as their genius is really they start with that. I wonder, or I'm curious, so that using those phrases are ways that that shows up. Or they might be the ones to be like, well, what would you do if you were a llama, right? Like just kind of getting people thinking of what would you do if you traveled to space, and having those questions, but not necessarily being super focused on the answers. That's where your invention genius comes in, right? They come up with those ideas. They're always bringing that creativity to problem solving. They create the new family traditions, right? Like new games, probably are the ones that create a lot of road trip games. Like, oh, I have an idea, or 10, right? Like they're always coming up with ideas. They have the whiteboards out there and they're like scratching on it with the different things that you can do. So having those constantly new ideas on how to approach family life is how invention shows up there. And those two right there make the phase called ideation, right? You come up with some questions and you come up with some ideas, and that's the ideation phase.
Okay, that's great. That's awesome. I don't have either of those. So those are both frustrating to me. So I can appreciate that for, those parents out there who are like that. Hey, what is yours actually? What's your working genius?
Well, thanks for asking. Yeah. So
Yeah.
my geniuses are discernment and tenacity. So two we haven't talked
Okay.
about yet.
Mhm.
My frustrations are invention and enablement. So yes, I'm never the one
Yay.
that comes up with the new ideas. I am the one that uses Pinterest a lot to help me. And now, Reels, Instagram, all of those things to
Mhm.
come up with ideas to implement into our family.
I love that. So would these parents be the ones that are like if you're thinking through a birthday party, like they're the ones that are like this birthday party is unreal. Like it's themed and they're like one time I went to a birthday party and it was like the most amazing theme. It was like horse theme and every kid got to like go and like pick out a little horse beanie baby at the time and like decorate them. It was amazing and I left thinking I don't think I could ever pull that off. Like I don't even know how she came up with that. So would that be something like that, something that you would see from wonder and invention?
Yeah, I think the aspects if we look from like the birthday planning perspective, what is it that our kids are into, right? Those big questions to identify the theme would be the wonder part. Like, well, what if we did a horse theme, or they really like this? What about having that? Some of those questions. Invention is like, oh, well, we could give everybody a pony to go home with. And it's
Got
like,
it.
okay, maybe that's not what we want to do. And if and so I'll just mention discernment, since this is where invention and discernment can work together really well. And that is someone who can evaluate ideas and really has that instinctive insight. So that gut feel of like, I don't think giving everyone a pony is a great idea, but what if we got everyone stuffed ponies? And then, or bouncing that ball back to the inventor to go, what else do you got? And you have those ideas and you refine them, to be able to do that. So, that works with birthday parties. That works with where are we going to register our kids for school? What kind of neighborhood do we want to live in? Like lots of different aspects that you're needing that evaluation and that gut instinct there.
That's great. It's great for those to go hand in hand. And I think probably as people are listening, they're also probably thinking about their co-parent and maybe where their genius lies. All right, let's go to galvanizing.
All right, galvanizing. So this one, short terminology is like the cheerleader. They're the ones with the boundless energy. I think this is also why we don't do it with little kids, right? Like they have boundless energy. It doesn't mean that they can bring energy to get everybody excited about a vacation or about getting ready to move, like if they have to change schools. Or I asked somebody who had galvanizing, I said, what does this look like for you as a mom? And they're like, my husband always got frustrated getting the kids up for school in the morning. And then I went in to get them up and I'm like singing a little song with them and tickling them and having this playful approach for it because galvanizing or energizing our kids to get out of bed in the morning brings her joy and energy. So she shows up to that differently than her husband does. And so galvanizing is the one that really brings that, let's get everybody on board with whatever idea we need to execute on. So I really wish we had somebody who had galvanizing in our family. So like Saturday morning chores, or even just getting out of bed. I could use a galvanizer to help get me out of bed in the morning.
That makes sense. That makes total sense. Okay, awesome. All right, what's the next one?
All right. The next one is enablement. And this one people don't necessarily think of if they have it as a genius, they don't necessarily think of it as a genius because they're the natural helper, right? So they're the ones that come into a room and go, oh, we don't have any forks set out. And they've got the forks on the table before anyone's realized that we don't have forks to eat with. They're looking at how can I help? So they're really moving that idea to initiate it and getting it done, right? Like the actual execution of the idea or the plan. So they they're ones that are more quiet behind the scenes, and it doesn't mean personality wise that they're quiet, right? But the work, part of the work that they contribute is quiet and behind the scenes, and they're filling in those gaps that you didn't necessarily know were there.
Okay, great. That's awesome. And then the last one, tenacity.
Yes, tenacity. That is my second genius. So it's one of my favorite ones, right? Sometimes this can look like the people who really thrive on having a to-do list and checking things off the list, right? But it doesn't always look that way. It's really looking a lot more of, did this project or plan or thing that we needed to do accomplish what we were hoping to accomplish? Did it meet the goal, right? So we threw out the birthday party. If like every kid is walking out happy and like they're super excited that they got to attend the birthday party, and your child is like, oh my gosh, this was the best birthday party ever, mission accomplished, right? So
For sure.
when you were like, she had this course theme, like yes, part of that is inventing that great idea, but also there's the execution part of it, because if it didn't actually meet the objective, then it wouldn't have accomplished what you were hoping for, right? So tenacity really makes sure that those initiatives meet the goals and the expectation that you were hoping to get for out of there.
Yeah, that's really, really great. So those are the six types, like an overview, very quick overview. I totally understand that you could probably do a workshop on each of these for like 90 minutes and like do a deep dive. But we just want, to get the information in people's heads. And some people will be like, oh my gosh, I'm loving this language. And I would love to know what my working genius is. What does that look like? Like what might be a next step for somebody if they're really enjoying this conversation so far?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different ways, right? You can go directly to the workinggenius.com and take the assessment there. Or you can connect with a licensed facilitator like myself, and we would probably still take the assessment, but be able to learn more. like you said at the beginning, I'm passionate about this. I could talk about it forever. Trying to figure out what I was going to share in a podcast and condense it down is definitely a challenge.
It
But
it is. It is a challenge. So I just wanted to give that because I know that some people are probably like, oh my gosh, I want to know before we even go on a little bit, because we're going to dive a little bit deeper into each of these. Um, but if that's you, if you're like, hey, I really want to know more about this, then you can push pause and go ahead and take that assessment if you want to. But I would like to highlight, I feel like so many times when we get in a group of people and we ask, like, what are you good at? Sometimes it can be crickets. But then when you ask, like, what's your challenge? What are you not so great at? Boy, are we very quick to highlight
yeah,
where we're lacking. And I think that's true for just human nature, because of that negativity bias that we know about in our brains, but also as parents. Man, parents are really hard on themselves. They really, really are. And so let's kind of, if you don't mind, just to kind of highlight the strengths of each of these, because I really want to, instead of saying, oh gosh, I am for sure not that, because I did that on my very first one. When I took that test, tenacity, I was like, oh my word, I think I scored a 0 on tenacity. um, so I'm kind of like thinking through, maybe projecting a little bit, that some of these parents who are listening might be like, oh, I'm definitely not that. I'm definitely not that. So can we kind of just really quickly highlight the strengths of each of these, and
yeah.
whatever in other info you want to give on each of these? I know we did like a high level, but let's just hit the strengths of each of them, so that maybe some parents that are listening can think of like, oh, that is a strength that I have for sure, so that we're leaning towards more, um, not necessarily like where we're lacking, but where we're doing a pretty solid job with raising
Yeah.
our sweet little humans. All right. So um go ahead and hit wonder, and then what core strength of that genius, but then also anything else that you want to highlight.
Yeah. Yeah. So with any strengths, right, come with challenges too. So I think I'll probably share a little bit of both. But before we dive into that, I think a lot of what you're getting at is what's helpful by having this language. And that's really what Working Genius is. It's a language. If you've been married for 15 years, you can probably pinpoint your spouse's working geniuses, maybe not both, but one. You can probably also spot their frustrations, right? But what Working Genius really does is it gives us language to help remove some of the guilt and judgment. So I'll use my own example. I have been called in different environments a dream crusher. And that's not a fun name to be called,
No, it's
right?
rude. That is
Um,
rude.
it is, but I can
Let's reframe that. Let's
understand,
reframe
right?
that.
And that's what Working Genius does, right?
Yes.
So when I took the test and I saw that my top genius was discernment, so I prefer to evaluate ideas, right? Like where are the things that it will work, it will not work. And one of my frustrations is invention. So I don't like coming up with new ideas. So I push past that as fast as possible. I learned that I was using my discernment just a little too soon in the process, right? And so by having the language, if I'm working with somebody in my family or at work and they're brainstorming, I can have the self awareness to go, oh, hey, we're in the invention phase of this. I don't like doing that. I'm going to go ahead and just pause for a minute, or hey, I'm going to step out. When you have some ideas you want me to evaluate, I'll pop back in. And then I can help discern those, which is far less. There's a lot less shame and guilt around using that. If somebody's like, "Hey, we don't need your discernment quite yet," then you can have less guilt and less judgment on others, right? So if you have that person that's always giving you new ideas, let's say that you're married to one of those, or you someone who has galvanizing, you have that, or even people such as myself who has tenacity. So I'm like, hey, did you get this done? Like, hey, this deadline's coming up. Like those types of things. It helps you understand that person a little bit better and not be so quick to judge them with what you think is a personality flaw when in reality they're using their working genius or frustration at maybe the wrong time there. So just a little bit there on that.
Yeah, I love that. That is a really, really great reminder. Um, just to always be open handed and willing to dive into the inner landscape and really learn more about yourself, how you are wired, how you're created, and also um, giving that same attention to how your co-parent or your boss or a coworker, how they
Mhm.
are also gifted, wired, and created. So I do love that reminder.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but you did ask about core strengths,
I
right?
did.
And so, with wonder, really, it's that being able to ponder the possibilities and noticing those gaps in potential. Is there a better way we can do something? Some of the challenges that people who have wonder as their genius might have is that if you have someone else in the family who prefers getting things done, right? They're more in that execution phase of the geniuses. They might get a little impatient with your questions. And then you also might feel misunderstood because your questions are being dismissed. And so that's wonder and the core strength there. And then you move into invention, right? They come up with the original solutions and the innovations. They have endless ideas. And so some of the challenges there are, right, like sometimes people might be overwhelmed with the amount of ideas that you present, or you might get discouraged when there's not time or energy to, explore the different ideas that you came up with. And then discernment, that strength of evaluating situations and ideas with that instinct, right? So you don't necessarily need a whole lot of data to back it up. You're just like, something feels off here. And so that's the strength there. But the challenge is that one, others might rely on you so much for decisions, right? That they're not developing their own critical thinking. I'm thinking specifically kids. Hopefully, your spouse or your partner has those critical thinking skills. But you also may be misunderstood as negative when you're providing that caution. Well, have you thought
Mhm.
about this or that piece of it? So those are some challenges that you might experience if it's your genius. And then
Yeah,
galvanizing. Oh,
sorry. I can
no, go
see with
ahead.
discernment, I can see that, especially with parenting. Sometimes it's really hard for us to stop talking when we're coaching our kids, and because we know the answer, right? Like, we have the background experience, like we've lived decades. So we're like, it is very clear what you should do right in this moment. And so I can see how that would be a challenge for someone with that genius of like, okay, stop talking and let your kid develop that muscle as
Mhm,
well. Pull in a
mhm.
little bit more wonder of curiosity of like, well, I wonder how you would handle this next time that happens in the lunchroom or whatever. I can see how that would definitely be a challenge, but also like leaning into that other genius of, hey, let's be open handed and curious and really ask more questions than give more directive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All right.
As a parent with discernment, yes,
Oh,
that is
you're
a
like, yes,
challenge.
yes. You validated it. Awesome. All right.
Yes.
Galvanizing.
Galvanizing. So, really, your core strength is being able to inspire and motivate others to get going. And sometimes that can come across as a challenge, right? If your enthusiasm feels like pressure to those who need some more time to process, or you might dismiss your role as just a cheerleader, right? But you're really the one that creates momentum for the family and what you're working on, whatever that might look like, right? Birthday party, vacation, those sorts of things. So it's very important, especially for those of us who might have galvanizing in our frustrations. If there is someone who can bring along some energy to really help boost our family to do what they need to be doing, that's an excellent friend to have.
I love that.
Um,
I love that.
and then enablement, right? Like this one's strength is the ability to respond to the needs of others with help, like anticipating the need. Everyone wants to help, right? So I remember when I first took this and I was like offended, this actually ended up in my frustrations. And I'm like, I am a helpful person. Like, how dare you say that's one of my frustrations? And then I had some coworkers take it and I was like, oh, they show up to projects very differently. And my husband actually has enablement. And I was like, oh, that's why I get frustrated with him because he's like, my mom needs help with this. And I told her I'd come over and do it. And I'm like, we had plans for dinner, right? So understanding how enablement helps and that it's like I call it the underrated genius in the fact that those who have it go, that's not a genius. And I think most people with any of their geniuses do that because since it comes naturally, you don't think about it like you were talking about with the negative bias earlier. Like you don't think about that strength because it's coming naturally. It's not taking a lot of effort to work in your genius. But if you're in your frustrations, you're thinking about that one a lot. So, that's a good example of how I think about it a lot, and he doesn't even necessarily recognize it as a genius that he has.
For sure.
Um, the challenge with that is when you are a helper, people ask you for help, or you see those needs and you say yes a lot. So
Mhm.
you might overcommit yourself, end up being exhausted. And then also, because your work is behind the scenes, then others might take that support for granted and not necessarily show the appreciation for the effort that you're putting in there. So, and then tenacity, right? So, ensuring that completion and results in alignment with family goals. So, if you know, what are your family goals? What are the type of family that you want to be? When they have that clarity, they can make sure that however the project that you're working on, whether that's a birthday party or it's vacation, or even just getting chores done on the weekend, right? That it's accomplishing that goal. And some of the challenges here, there's a lot that falls on moms, by the way, that falls into the tenacity, right? Like just getting things done that have to be done. And sometimes you have to go, is that even worth getting done? Like, I don't know that that
Mhm.
adds any value um,
Sure.
to our family. So some of the challenge, you might get frustrated when others don't follow through, right? Like I have the mindset that a clean and decluttered space is a nice calming effort for me, or calming space for me. My teenage daughter doesn't necessarily feel the same way. So,
Sure.
what's within my control there? You have to keep the common spaces cleaned up, and we'll keep your bedroom door shut and get a Glade plug-in for your room. So, that's how we approach that one there. But you may also feel misunderstood and feel like naggy and pushy when you're having to get the family on track with what you're trying to accomplish as well.
Yeah, that's really, really great. And I'm hoping that as you're saying those things, that more and more listeners are thinking through of like, oh yeah, that's definitely me, right? Um, this is kind of where I lean. This is where my genius leans. So I think it's as we're recording, it's summer. And so a lot of times during the summer, families plan vacations, plan camping trips, take big vacation, whatever it is. Maybe you're planning a staycation. Either way, you're kind of having to figure out what are we doing as a family. So let's kind of take these six geniuses and walk us through how a parent who has these geniuses, how they would plan out a family vacation to give us a really practical example of how this kind of, works out in family life.
Yeah, and that's again a great example of something that you can use working genius for, and something I would encourage everyone to do, right? Because you're going to have two geniuses out of six, and if you're in a co-parenting relationship, you may cover four of them, which means you're going to have a couple of gaps. But hopefully by hearing some of the language and everything, you can lean in onto some friends that you're like, oh, this person's always asking questions, or they always come up with ideas. How can I lean on my community to help fill in some of those gaps when you're doing something? So because it's really about working as a team within the family unit and within your community to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. So, within the framework of a vacation, and I think I came up with that idea because it is summertime, but also I just really want a vacation. Um, so I was like, that was what was on top of mind when we were talking about the topic. So, the genius of wonder is going to go, what kind of experience do we want in a family? What are we wanting to go? Like, are we feeling more beach or mountain? Are we looking for adventure or relaxation? Like they're asking those questions, right? And then invention is going like, well, what if we did a road trip with themed stops along the way? Or we could go parasailing, or we could do, kayaking in the Everglades. Like they're going to come up with those ideas, and some of them may be destination ideas, and some of them may be like, hey, what if we go surfing on top of the car? Well, thankfully, then you have discernment come in and go, you know what? I don't think that's a safe choice. But they can also go, well, we only have this many days. Like, how much of that time do we want to dedicate to traveling versus what we want to see? So, really going back and forth with the ideas, the inventor, and going like, well, is this the best idea? And narrowing it down to what you want to do. And then your galvanizer is going to be like, all right, let's make this happen, right? We're so excited to get to go on vacation. And they keep that momentum going when like the planning stalls, right? Like, let's say you have somebody who is needing to book the tickets and maybe tenacity is not their thing, or they have other things on their plate, right? They had to schedule six kids' appointments that day, and then it's like, oh shoot, I didn't book the plane tickets for vacation. Your galvanizer is going to come in and help build that momentum back up and be like, oh yeah, I know we got to get this done because of this, and like bringing that excitement there. And then enablement, right? Like they're going to be like, what do I need to do to help? Hey, did we get the sunscreen packed? Did we remember the swimsuits? Like, or they just put the swimsuits in the bag and the kids didn't even know about it. That might be booking the tickets, right? Like that somebody who doesn't have enablement and be like, oh shoot, I have that on my to-do list. I need to get that done. And then if you're with a person with enablement, they're like, oh, I booked them this morning, already taken care of. And it's like, ah, sweet, thank you. And then tenacity, right? Like this could be making sure that you have everything that you need for a successful trip. And it could look like, hey, we have all of these packing lists. Do we have everything that's on there? We've got our confirmations, but it could also be like, okay, we decided we want a relaxation vacation. Does this itinerary support a relaxing vacation? And then at the end of the vacation, you can just look around your family and go, they look relaxed. We've accomplished that objective.
That's great. That is a really great example. Thank you for walking us through that because I think it does that real life practicality gives us a better idea of how these play out in real life. Okay, tell me this before we kind of start landing the plane. How So, is the goal of Working Genius just to identify, or is the goal to like lean into where our frustrations are and build those up? Is the goal to lean into our actual working geniuses and build those up even greater? Like, what is the goal? If I'm a parent listening to this and I'm going to go take the assessment or whatever, what's my overarching goal for this? How can I utilize this as a parent?
Yeah, and this is where I think it is probably a little trickier in family life versus like a work team project approach, because every job is a six-letter job. You need all six steps in order to accomplish something. Well, you can accomplish things, but it's not always the right thing if you're missing one of the steps. So I would say the first thing is self awareness, right? Like that's going to be the first goal. And then the language around it so that you can understand, why do I get frustrated with this? Or how is it that I can get into the zone and do this for hours and not realize that time has passed? So that self-awareness piece, and having the language to help communicate with with your family, is really able to help reduce that conflict and improve communication. So instead of being called a dream crusher, which by the way, my husband was not one that called me that. But you
We were
know,
all
it
wondering. We were all wondering.
but improving that communication and reducing
Yeah.
conflict, and really helping everybody thrive. So I would say, no, it's not to lean in and like strengthen your frustrations. It's how do you find support in those frustrations, find somebody else who has those, lean on those people.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's not about like, I can lean on, let's say it's tenacity. I can't, and you had that as a genius, which you said you didn't, but I can't just be like, Jamie, I'm going to outsource all my tenacity stuff to you from my family. No,
Mhm.
but I can be like, Jamie, how do you approach this aspect of family life and get some insights to be able to use those skills from somebody who has it as their genius. And then, yeah, you get natural energy and joy from being in your geniuses. So, how can you spend more time in those? And that's not always going to be in family life, right? Maybe it's
Mhm.
you volunteer with a local organization. How can you utilize your geniuses in that to give you fuel and energy to get you through the things you have to get done at home that are outside of your geniuses? And then, same thing with work, right? If you can
Yeah.
spend more time in your geniuses there and find a role that fits at work that gives you that energy and joy, then you can use that energy to help you through those other competencies and frustrations that you have to do.
Sure. That makes total sense. Okay. We got three more questions. Okay. But they're
Okay.
like quick ones. Okay. You're actually the first guest that we're having on this podcast, which is so exciting. So I was really thinking through, what do I want to ask each guest? And because this podcast is Emotions with Ease, and we talk about how emotions are just energy in motion, they are constantly, waving through us. I would like to ask you, what emotion are you currently getting stuck in most frequently?
So, can I give like a really real
You
but
give
also
whatever
humorous example?
you give whatever you
Okay.
want. There's
I
no
may
stipulation.
reach out later and be like, okay, cut that. I don't want that out there in the public for people to know. So, with being a mom of three kids, two littles that come from hard places, it's stressful sometimes, a lot of the times. Especially with working full time and doing all of that. So I use some anxiety meds to help me out. So the emotion I'm currently stuck in is anxiety because
Mm.
as a mom, I made sure my kids had all their stuff ordered and I did not order my own anxiety meds. So I have ran out of those. So I'm having anxiety on if my anxiety meds will arrive before I run out of anxiety meds. So that is my emotion that I'm currently stuck in, hoping to be able to work through that when I go check the mail here in a few minutes.
And I love that. And I hope that those meds are out in that mailbox and it's going to be like glorious. I love
But if
that.
not, I have my deep breathing that I've been using to help
Hey,
me.
well, that's my
I
next
have
question.
my
What's
water,
like,
my
that a
water.
girl, that a girl. You're singing my song. That's my next question is, so the emotion that you're getting stuck in, because usually there's going to be an emotion that we're like, you know what, I'm feeling that a little bit more than normal. I'm not necessarily riding that 90-second wave of that emotional peak. Um, what's a go-to tool that you have right now? And maybe it's one like that you always use and you're like, hey, this is working well right now. Or maybe it's one that you just started using a couple of days ago and you're like, I'm going to ride this tool for a couple of days and then I'm going to plug in a new tool. But what's a tool that is currently working for you?
I'm going to share a helpful one and an unhelpful one because the
I love that.
unhelpful one is I keep clicking on the app like every hour, going, has it moved through the network at all? That is not a helpful
Where
tool.
is the package?
That just feeds into my anxiety.
For sure.
So yeah, no, my go-to tools are usually my water is first. I call it my emotional support
Love it.
cup. I always have it. So I try to stay hydrated. And then I do the exercise of focusing, okay, what's within my control? Right? Like
That's
I
right.
cannot control when the mail is going to arrive. So I'm like, okay, what can I shift to focus on that is in my control? And I'm like, okay.
Mm,
I look at those things. And in this case, it was all right, I have this many pills left. How can I make them last? And how
mhm.
can I set a system up better so that next month I don't run out before
Yes.
they're supposed to be here?
I love that. I love that, especially with that emotion of anxiety that when our brain starts to go into like, what if, like, what if the meds don't come today? What if they don't come tomorrow? What if I go on a work trip and they still aren't here? And anytime that we start that question with what if, that is like the invitation for a hello anxiety. Go ahead and pack your bags and stay in here. Right.
Yep. Yep.
So
We're going for a ride.
exactly. And so what you're doing is instead of what if, you're going to what is. What do I
Mhm.
have control over here? Like right now, in this moment, what do I know to be true? So I love that tool. And I'm so grateful that you're able to reach for that tool in those anxious moments. And I know that that tool will be really, really helpful for other parents that are listening. The last question is that where can people connect with you if they're like, oh my gosh, this info is so awesome. I am geeking out over all of the information and I just want to know more. How can they connect with you?
Yeah. So easiest way would be to email me at c.bratcher1949 at gmail.com. So c.bratcher1949 and just put working genius in the subject line and I'll get back to you and we can, that can look like, hey, let's go grab a cup of coffee and chat some more. Like, take the assessment or look at doing a workshop sometime too.
I love that. I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for being the first guest on the Emotions with Ease podcast. We really
You're
appreciate your
welcome.
time.